Today we're looking at the new Nik Collection 2 and answering the question, is it worth it? If all is going to plan today, this video should coincide with the launch of the new Nik Collection 2. In this video, I'm going to look at what you get in the new Nik Collection and try to answer the question, is it worth it? First though, we need to have a quick bit of history to understand the Nik Collection and how we've got to where we are. The Nik Collection was initially developed by Nik Software, a private company which Nikon later invested in. If you're a Nikon Capture NX user, that's why the software bears so many features in common with the Nik Collection. Then, in 2012, Google bought Nik Software and promised to further develop their products. The first development was Analog Effects, which was followed quickly by Analog Effects 2. Then, in 2016, Google took the step of making the Nik Collection free and started to withdraw support. For a while, it looked like the Nik Collection would die. But then in October 2017, DxO stepped in and acquired the Nik Collection from Google. It then set about fixing some of the software problems that had been introduced over the years. In June 2018, DxO launched the first release of the Nik Collection 2018. A lot of people, including myself, welcomed the new software as it would prolong the life of what was probably one of the best editing suites out there. But some Nik users were critical of the latest release. Probably the biggest criticism at the time was that there's no new development tools, and some of the most frustrating problems were still present in the software. One of the most frustrating issues for a lot of people was that Nik didn't fully support 4K monitors. What you'd see on a 4K monitor was a tiny interface which made the software virtually unusable. Following the launch of the Nik Collection 2018, DxO began compiling enhancement requests from users ready for the next version of the software. From these requests, 4 main themes emerged. 1. Fix the 4K monitor problem. 2. Extend the current range of presets in the collection. 3. Remove the dependency on using Adobe software to run the Nik Collection. And 4. Provide a RAW editing capability in the Nik Collection. Let's have a look at how the new Nik Collection measures up in these 4 areas. The first improvement to the Nik Collection is one that I can't demonstrate. Whilst I have a 5K monitor, I've never experienced a problem with the interface shrinking, so I've got to take DxO's word for this that it's fixed. I do know that a lot of people have this problem and that lots of people say that they can't use the Nik Collection until it's fixed. Of course, purchasing the new software also means that if it doesn't work, you can report it as a bug request and get support. My own personal experience of using DxO support has always been very positive. So let's move on and look at some of the new things that I can check, and we'll start with the presets. Overall, there are 42 new presets in the Nik Collection 2, and they're in a group called En Vogue. What you will find though is that you've got 10 new presets in Color Effects Pro, 10 in Silver Effects Pro, 10 in Analog Effects, and 12 in HDR Effects. Now before I show these to you, I must admit that I personally am not a huge fan of presets. That's because I'm a landscape photographer, so I like my editing to look as natural as possible. That said, I do recognise the value of presets and that a large proportion of the Nik users love them. The test image I'm going to be using for this isn't one of my usual landscapes, but rather one from a recent trip to Liverpool. This is 3 images merged together and that I've cropped. It gives a print size of around 25 to 30 inches depending on the resolution you use. I wanted to use a large image to check that there's no memory management problems in the collection. Let's start with the new presets in Color Effects Pro. If you're already familiar with Color Effects Pro, you'll find that there's nothing changed in the interface. You still have all the filters that you previously had over in the left of the screen. But if you click on the Recipes heading, you'll find the En Vogue category. This is home to all the new presets that have been introduced into Color Efex Pro. I can imagine these being very useful for some types of photography like weddings, events and fashion. These also remind me of some of the types of images that have become popular on Instagram, so this, if you're into Instagram, might be an ideal set of presets. Let's have a look what we have in Silver Efex Pro. Again, there's no change to the interface, it's just the same as it was in the previous version. But if we look under the presets library, we find the new En Vogue presets. Clicking through the new presets to see their effect, even I find some of these quite useful. Let's take a quick look at analog effects. If you're not familiar with this plugin, it tries to mimic some historical film looks from classic analog cameras. If I click here at the top, you can see the different types of tool combination available to create the different effects. This is also where we find the new En Vogue presets. Clicking through the new presets, they do have a very nostalgic feel, and I'm actually finding them quite appealing. Let's quickly look at the final set of presets in HDR effects. If you use the Nik Selective tool, you'll find two HDR effects options there. We can merge multiple images together, or we can apply tone mapping to a single image. It's the tone mapping where we find the En Vogue presets in the presets library. Even given my negative bias against presets, none of the new HDR presets really appeal to me at all. That said, I can imagine these being very useful for a special purpose, and that's pre-processing an image before converting it to black and white. Let's give it a try with this one. Overall, if you're a fan of presets, then I suspect you'll welcome the new En Vogue presets in Nik. Let's move on now to examine how DxO is removing the need for Nik to run in Adobe host applications, and how they're integrating RAW support. I'm going to start by saying that the request to remove the need to use an Adobe product to run Nik isn't entirely accurate. You can run the Nik Collection as a standalone editor as well as use them in tools like Affinity Photo and Capture One. After we've looked at how DxO has approached this problem, I'm going to check that this is still possible and we can use the Nik Collection in these other tools. If you're familiar with the DxO product lineup, you'll know that they have a well-respected RAW converter called PhotoLab 2. Based on my experience with RAW files from the likes of Sony, Canon, Nikon, Panasonic and Olympus cameras, this is by far the best RAW converter for the sharpness and detail. I've even published a video on YouTube where PhotoLab made me reevaluate some of the cameras I've sold because I thought the image quality was poor. When I run the RAW files from these cameras through PhotoLab, the results are simply amazing and well beyond what the likes of Lightroom could achieve. So, the DxO solution to removing Adobe products and integrating RAW support to the Nik Collection is to integrate Nik with PhotoLab 2. Now before you jump up shouting, "But I don't have PhotoLab," when you buy the new Nik Collection, it includes PhotoLab Essentials in the price. Let's look at how DxO has done this before we discuss the merits of the solution. Towards the bottom corner of the PhotoLab interface, you'll now see a new button for the Nik Collection. Click this and it opens a plugin selector dialog. Here we have a settings option. You can use this to control the image conversion from RAW into something that Nik can handle. If we now select one of the Nik options, we convert the image into a TIFF or a JPEG depending on the settings we've chosen. We can then make our changes and save the results to a new image. Back in PhotoLab, we can see our new TIFF image with the Nik effect applied. If we were then to select that version of the image and process it again in another plugin or the same one, we create another version of the image. This behaviour is just like Lightroom, so if you're an experienced Lightroom Nik user, you'll be very familiar with this. Now for why this solution may not suit everyone. If you're an existing PhotoLab user like myself, you may feel that you're losing out by having the software included in the price of the Nik Collection. This I can personally accept, but there is a bigger problem for me. I've now switched entirely to shooting with the Fuji X-Trans system for my work. PhotoLab doesn't currently support the Fuji RAW format, and it appears it would take a significant development from DxO to introduce it. This really is such a shame because I'd love to see the quality that DxO could achieve from a Fuji RAW file. Having said all this, if you're not a Fuji user and you don't already own PhotoLab, I think you should get very excited about this. It's a fantastic offer. Although it's only the Essentials version of PhotoLab that's included, it's still an amazing RAW converter. I know the word amazing's used too much these days, but PhotoLab genuinely is amazing for cameras and lens combinations it supports. Now let's have a look at those other options I wanted to check for using the Nik Collection. The first test is to see if we can open a supported image file directly into one of the Nik Collection. Here I've got some TIFF files that I can drag and drop onto the icon for the tool that I want to use. As with the previous version of the collection, this opens the image where I can then edit it and save it. The next check I want to do is that we can still use the new Nik Collection in Capture One. Here I'm in Capture One, and if I right click, I can see that using the Edit With option I have the new Nik Collection available. Actually, it seems to have made itself available automatically during installation. This is interesting as the installation didn't detect Capture One and I made no attempt to add it. If I select to edit the image in Viveza, I can see that the integration seems just as it did before. Now let's check Affinity Photo. When I went through the installation for the Nik Collection, I manually added a new folder for Affinity Photo. I then set this folder up in Affinity Photo as being a source of plugins. This then makes the new Nik Collection available from the menu. If I run Silver Efex Pro, everything should work as it did before. Let's now try the same but with Viveza, because Viveza's always had a colour problem when trying to process 16-bit files from within Affinity Photo. Unfortunately, it looks like this problem still persists in the latest version. At this point, I'm going to stop trying all these different options and I'm going to try and summarise the position for you. Firstly, the new Nik Collection 2 doesn't offer any new editing tools. There are, however, 42 new presets that many users are going to find very helpful. The new Nik Collection also doesn't have any interface changes at all. I couldn't find anything over the previous version. Personally, I think that this is a good thing as I don't need to keep relearning existing tools. I also think that the existing interface and shortcut keys work brilliantly, so why change them? The fix to the 4K monitor problem is long overdue and I'm sure very welcome for a lot of people. If you've been holding off purchasing the Nik Collection because of this, I think now's the time to reconsider. If you're thinking about moving away from Adobe and want one of the best RAW converters on the market, the bundling of Photolab Essentials with Nik is an absolute bargain. That said, if you're one of the growing number of Fuji X-Trans users, it's not going to work for you. But if you've got a large back catalogue of RAW files from other supported cameras, it could still make sense. For me personally, the price of the upgrade probably isn't worth it, other than if I need the support from DxO. But if you fall into one of the group of users I've mentioned, the new Nik Collection could be an absolute bargain for you. The decision really will depend on your personal circumstances, so I hope you use the information in this video to help evaluate and make a decision. But what we mustn't forget in all of this is that the Nik Collection remains one of the best sets of editing tools on the market today. I hope you found this review helpful. I'm Robin Whalley, you've been watching Lenscraft. I'll see you next time for another video.